Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today we're tackling someone who, I have to admit, intimidated me a little bit going into this Leo Tolstoy.
Yeah, he's a lot, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. But we're going beyond War and Peace in this deep dive, right? We're going into his personal letters, reflections from his children, and even his philosophical work. The kingdom of God is within you.
Yeah, it's a real mix. I mean, to really get Tolstoy, you've got to go beyond the novels, see how he lived, what he wrestled with.
Absolutely. An expert speaker reading through everything, I was blown away by, particularly in a confession, his sort of raw honesty at the height of his success, this existential crisis he goes through.
Right, like you'd think fame, fortune, that would be it, right? But
Yeah.
no, he calls his life in a confession a stupid and spiteful joke. I mean, come on.
Heavy stuff, right? From the guy who wrote these epic narratives, sweeping stories, what did he find so meaningless? Was he specific?
Well, he really struggled with, like, the emptiness of the high life, the parties, the praise, even just chasing pleasure. He's really open about it. The affairs, the gambling, trying to outrun that feeling of meaninglessness.
Wow. So it's almost like he's trying to distract himself from these big, like, life purpose questions,
Sure.
right? So from there, he starts questioning the usual answers.
Exactly. He dives into traditional religion, tries to find solace there, then he swings over to the science of his day, that sort of hardcore materialism, and neither one really does it for him.
So he's stuck between these two big forces, faith and reason. What was it about traditional religion that didn't work for him?
Tolstoy felt that organized religion, especially the Russian Orthodox Church he was born into, it was all just, I don't know, rituals and dogma, empty gestures. He wanted true spiritual life. He even talks about feeling like he was living a lie, like outwardly following the rules, but inside feeling totally disconnected.
So there was no authenticity for him, no connection to something deeper.
Exactly. He craved this genuine, internally felt faith, something that resonated deep down, not just rules imposed from outside.
And if traditional religion wasn't doing it, did he find any answers in science?
He gave it a shot, for sure. But the science back then, it was all about the material world, just a bunch of physical processes. And Tolstoy, he's yearning for meaning, for purpose. He felt like science just reduced life to this cold, indifferent machine.
So understanding the laws of physics, the origins of the universe, none of that could ever really satisfy that deeper human need.
That's right. He wanted something more, something that spoke to the human experience on a deeper level, something that transcended the material world.
And that's where he lands on this unique take on faith, right? Not blind faith, but something deeper, more about understanding.
Exactly. He really separates blind faith from what he calls true faith. For him, it was this intuitive knowing, like an inner compass pointing toward life's purpose. He even said that faith, real faith, is the strength of life. Without it, he felt life would just be meaningless.
Wow, that's powerful. Equating faith with the will to live. It's like, without this inner guide, what's the point? Right?
And what's fascinating is how his faith wasn't static. It wasn't this fixed thing. Tolstoy was all about constantly questioning, wrestling with his beliefs, trying to get closer and closer to the truth.
And this evolution, this constant search for truth, is what leads him to his, let's be honest, pretty unique interpretation of Christianity.
Oh, yeah. This is where Tolstoy gets really interesting. He loves Jesus, the teachings, the message of love and compassion, but the church, he's not having it, especially the church's ties to political power.
Okay, so that seems like a paradox.
Yeah.
Inspired by Jesus, but denouncing the institution that claims to represent him. How did he square that?
That's the million-dollar question, right? Tolstoy really wrestled with it, and he came to separate the core of Jesus's message from how the church had, I don't know, maybe twisted it over time for its own gain.
So he saw a distinction between the original message of love and how the church as an organization had co-opted it, often aligning itself with power structures.
Exactly. He criticizes the emphasis on rituals and dogma, saying it misses the point of what Jesus taught. To him, they cared more about maintaining their own power than embodying that radical love and compassion.
And this rejection of external authority, especially
Yeah.
the church siding with the state, that becomes a major theme for him, right?
Absolutely. And that's where his ideas about anarchy come into play, which we'll unpack in a bit. But trust me, it's all connected to his faith and how he saw true Christianity.
Okay, so Tolstoy and anarchy, I'll be honest, that's a connection I never really made. When I hear anarchy, It's usually not a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Chaos, lawlessness, the whole nine yards. Is that what Tolstoy was advocating for?
Hold your horses, right. It's
Yeah.
not that simple. Tolstoy's Anarchy was like deeper, more optimistic, I guess you could say. He wasn't about embracing chaos, but more like rejecting this idea that we need governments, authorities to tell us what's right and wrong to keep things in check.
So instead of laws from above, it's about individuals guided by their own internal compass, like a built-in sense of morality.
Bingo. He truly believed that real social harmony, real peace, it had to come from within. Not from punishments or threats, but from genuine love, compassion, nonviolence. He saw the state, with its laws and prisons, as this clunky, ineffective way to try and make people good.
It's a radical concept, for sure. But Tolstoy wasn't just theorizing about this stuff, was he? He actually tried to live it out.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes his Anarchy so interesting. It wasn't some far-off utopia. It was like a way of life, a way of being in the world, interacting with everyone around him. Like, if we actually embodied love and nonviolence in every little thing we did, we could start to dismantle these systems of power and force, the things that he saw as the root of so much suffering in the world.
Which brings us to this huge aspect of Tolstoy, nonviolence. I mean, this wasn't just some side idea for him, right? It was woven into everything he believed, from his critique of the state to, I'm assuming, his personal relationships.
100%. For Tolstoy, nonviolence wasn't some tactic or a political move. It was the way to live, based on his whole understanding of Christ's teachings.
And we see that woven through all this source material, don't we? Were there any parts that really stood out to you where he talks about this?
So many, honestly. But the one that gets me every time is when he compares governments to, get this, bands of brigands. Like, their power at the end of the day is all about using violence or the threat of it to stay in control. And it's kind of true if you think about it. How many empires, kingdoms, whatever, have risen and fallen throughout history on the back of violence and coercion?
It's brutal, but yeah, it cuts to the core of his argument against the state. Violence being this total opposite of true Christianity, the love and compassion he thought should drive us.
Exactly. And he wasn't messing around with this. He urged people to resist any kind of violence, even defending themselves. Like, radical pacifism was the only way out of this endless loop of violence, the eye for an eye thing that he believed just caused more pain and suffering in the world.
It's hard to wrap your head around,
Yeah.
especially today when violence feels so, I don't know, unavoidable in a lot of ways.
I hear you, but Tolstoy was insistent. True strength, for him, wasn't about force or might. It was about sticking to love no matter what, even when someone's coming at you with aggression. By refusing to play the violence game, he thought we could be examples of a different way of being, one based on understanding, compassion, forgiveness, all that good stuff.
So real social change starts with each of us making that choice to act differently.
Exactly. Now, he knew a world totally free of violence sounded kind of pie in the sky, but he believed striving for it, even in tiny ways every day, showing love and compassion, that was the only way to build a just and peaceful world.
And his ideas, they didn't stay tucked away in Russia, did they? He had a huge impact on another guy known for his nonviolent resistance, Gandhi.
Oh, yeah. Their letters back and forth are amazing.
Yeah.
Tolstoy was so moved by Gandhi's commitment to nonviolence, called him more Christian than most Christians. They talked about passive resistance, refusing to play along with unjust systems, but without using violence. Gandhi even shouted out Tolstoy in his writings, especially, "The kingdom of God is within you." It really resonated with Gandhi.
That's wild, right? Tolstoy, hanging out in Russia, having this ripple effect on a movement happening across the world.
It just shows you how powerful ideas can be, how they can break down borders and get people moving toward change on a global scale. And it all started with Tolstoy grappling with these personal questions about faith, meaning the whole shebang. It led him to create this philosophy that still speaks to people today all over the place.
It's mind-blowing, right? These ideas coming from this one guy wrestling with these huge questions, and it ends up inspiring a movement across the world.
It shows you the power of ideas, how they can really take off and change things.
And Tolstoy's ideas, anarchy, nonviolence, they were radical back then, and honestly, they still make you think today. If he were around now, what do you think he'd say about, like, everything going on? The tech, the environment, all of it.
Oh, man, that's a good one. I mean, from everything we've read, Tolstoy would probably have a lot to say about technology, that's for sure. He seemed pretty skeptical of anything that, I don't know, distracted people from really living, living authentically, helping others, all that.
So all the tech we're glued to, the
Yeah.
constant distractions, that wouldn't fly with him. He'd see it as pulling us away from real connection, real self-reflection.
Totally. He was all about simplicity, living in tune with nature, focusing on what really mattered in life.
Hmm.
It's not hard to imagine him giving us a good talking to about how technology just fuels this need for more, 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 never satisfied.
Yeah, he'd probably tell us to put down the phones, step away from the screens, have real conversation, go for a walk, enjoy the view without needing to post it online.
Exactly. And speaking of nature, I bet he'd be pretty heartbroken about what we've done to the planet. He was big on respecting nature, seeing it as essential for a good life.
Didn't he write a lot about getting your hands dirty? Literally, working the land. I can see him being really concerned about how disconnected we've become from the natural world. Like, we see it as something separate from us, something to use up instead of appreciating.
100%. He might even connect the environmental crisis to this whole thing we have with progress, always needing more stuff, more growth, no matter the cost.
It's kind of scary how much he seemed to predict about the struggles we're facing today. Makes you realize his writings are still relevant, maybe even more so now.
For sure, it's like a wake-up call. A reminder that real progress isn't about getting more stuff or fancier tech. It's about being true to ourselves, to each other, and to the planet. Living with love, compassion, and trying to do right by each other.
Powerful stuff. Well, expert speaker, this deep dive has been amazing. I feel like we've only scratched the surface of Tolstoy, but I've learned so much.
Me too. There's always something more to discover with him.
And to everyone listening, we hope this has sparked your curiosity. Pick up some Tolstoy, see what resonates with you. Who knows, you might be surprised what you find. Until next time on The Deep Dive, keep exploring, keep those brains working, and most importantly, keep seeking out those nuggets of wisdom that make life a little bit brighter.